Hey, welcome everybody to the Max Show. That is Massive Abundance Exposed, where we expose all the badass secrets of entrepreneurs all around the world. My name is Chris Stafford, and today we've got the most amazing Lisa B. Marshall. I love using your middle initial. Lisa Marshall is the communications expert. She has a brand new book out called Smart Talk. You actually have to get this book. She's a podcaster. She has online courses. She's an author. She's a consultant. She's consulted with people like Johns Hopkins University, Harvard University. This woman knows her communication stuff. So I'm really looking forward to talking to her. So we're going to get started in just a second. But before we do, shameless plug, make sure you go to massiveabundanceinc.com. Make sure you sign up, get some free goodies for yourself. And let's get started talking to Lisa Marshall. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Max Show and welcome to Lisa Marshall, our communications expert. How are you doing, Lisa?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm so glad that you are here. We have so many questions that I really want to get into, all the wonderful stuff that you're doing. I can't believe you are a speaker, an author, a coach. You have online courses. You're this amazing podcaster. But first, before I get into all that, I want to find out a little bit about your background and how you got to lisabmarshall.com. I love saying that.
Well, it's a sad story. When I started my career, I walked into the office of a very senior manager because I had been summoned and my stomach was doing flip-flops and I was all upset. And I sit down and he says, and I'll never forget this. This is his exact words. He said, "Lisa, you're like a ship coming into port. You're like a cruise liner that comes in, shakes all the other boats around them, and has no idea that you've done it." And I was mortified. Oh my gosh. He said, "We want to help you with that. We want to send you to some training." I thought, okay. Now here, I thought I was a good communicator. I had been in Toastmasters. I had been in a number of different communication-related things. Again, public speaking communication. And I thought I was good. So they sent me to this training class, and I sit down next to this guy. He was from the post office. And the guy next to me was this curmudgeon. He was awful. He was just the meanest guy. And he was like, "Oh, I hate being here." And, you know, they do a test and they check all the managers, and the ones that do the worst get sent to this charm school. And, you know, that's why I'm here. And I don't understand. And the first thing I thought, oh, you know, this guy, I don't want to be like him. And we take this test of our skills, of our communication skills. And we get these scores like in different categories. And once you finish the scores, I said, "Oh, I'm dying to see what this guy's score is." And I looked down at his test, and I swear his scores were identical to mine.
Oh, wow.
And I went, oh, I need to fix my communication skills. So I got dedicated at that point personally that I was going to improve. But of course, then it was always on my mind, communication skills. And I advanced into GE's corporate audit staff, and on the audit staff we were with different areas, you know, in manufacturing, information systems, finance, and we kept looking at problems from these different perspectives on these teams. But I always kept saying, we need a communication person. You know, a lot of these issues, the crux of the issue, yes, it's technical, yes, it's manufacturing, but there's still these core communication things that need to get fixed, or we're never going to fix the problems.
Right.
And they said, "Well, if you're so fascinated by it and you think you could do it, we'll send you to school. Go get a master's degree and come back and help us set up programs." And that's how I got started.
Wow.
So,
and then you decided to go on your own after that?
well, I went on my own only because part of the master's program, I did a dual concentration, and one of the concentrations was organizational, and they made you do a project in the community. And so I did this master's thesis project for a large bank, a very large bank in the Northeast at the time. And when they finished the project, I was thrilled. I was having a great time doing this project. I would have, you know, I was just happy. It was exciting and interesting work. And at the end, they handed me this big check. And I'm like, "What's this for?" It was just my master's thing. I wasn't expecting to be paid. They're like, "Oh no, you know, this is very valuable." And I was like, "I can get paid to do this?" I'm like, "I'm doing this for my life."
I love it. I love it. That's
yeah,
great.
I had no idea that, you know, that people paid to do communication audits, people paid to help, you know, deal with conflict, people pay to help building their teams stronger. And that's what I do. And I love it. And you can tell.
That is great. You know, Lisa, I mean, one of the things that you probably know, and we talked a little bit about the fact too, that, you know, we have a lot of realtors here on the line that are going to be watching. We have a lot of newer entrepreneurs. Obviously, when you're starting your own business or when you're running your own business, whether it's real estate or whatever, communication's key, right? I mean, we all think that great leaders have to be great communicators. I mean,
and I think it's absolutely true that communication, of course, is the key essence of being effective. And when you're think about a business person, it's how do you differentiate yourself? Even as a realtor, how do you differentiate yourself? I saw some TV program with a realtor who focuses on, houses that can't be sold, the hoarders and all kinds of issues. I'm sure you guys all know the difficult ones, but that's what she specialized in. And I thought to myself, wow, that's pretty interesting that she's differentiated herself as a realtor to get these that no other realtor wants. Now, whether she's making money or not, I don't know. But clearly she created something that was a niche for her that people would come to her. Yesterday, I was in my hometown where I grew up, and I was looking at all the houses that were for sale. And I kept noticing Dan White, Dan White, Dan White, Dan White. And Dan White does real estate for Haddon Heights, for that particular town. If you want to sell your house or you want to buy a house, you go to Dan because he's the man for that town. Right. And he's differentiated himself. And I think that comes to solid communication skills to be able to do that.
Well, I can see too, Lisa, why you do so well and you're so successful because, we already established that communication skills are really key for entrepreneurs. But then, I've been running my own businesses. I've got 3 businesses right now, and I've been running my own businesses for over 25 years. I have run into so many entrepreneurs that have absolutely no communication skills whatsoever. I mean, you look at somebody like a Larry Ellison or a Steve Jobs, where, typical hotheads, I mean, they don't strike me as having these great communication skills. So you must, what's the key there? I mean, do you need these kind of communication skills to really be successful?
I think that there's different types of communication skills for different situations. For some, the communication skill has to be leading and inspiring a team. For some, the communication skill it's the opposite direction. Maybe it's somebody who's super technical and needs to be really concise with their information in order to communicate that upwards. For somebody that's in social media, maybe it's effective social media communication, which is completely different from those types of communication. Right. So I think what happens is some people say, oh, he's not a good communicator. Well, in what area is he not a good communicator? He may be poor interpersonal communicator, or he may be poor on television, but they may be really great in person or one-on-one. It depends on what specific skill you're talking about. And I think that's why a lot of people say, oh, they don't need help with their communication skills. Oh, I'm a good communicator. In fact, my client right now that I'm working with, she came to me because her boss made her come, which is often the case with some of my clients. She's an excellent communicator. She really is an excellent communicator. But she made a disastrous board presentation. She was unable to motivate staff, and she needed help with some communications. When she called me up on the phone, she said, I don't know, I'm a good communicator. I'm not sure why my boss thinks I need your help, but I guess I do. Interesting. And for her, there were specific skills that we needed to work on for her. In fact, it was the ability to be a good storyteller. She had no idea about storytelling, didn't understand the impact of storytelling, didn't understand how to connect in that way to use stories. So that's what we worked with her. And now she's one of my biggest fans. She made a second board presentation during the time that I worked with her. The second one was so successful that now she's complaining that she's getting too much information or too many calls from the board saying, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? She's now the go-to person in that area.
I love it.
So I think that some people, they may be good at some areas of communication, but they still need help in other areas. I still need help. I'm an expert. I still need help.
Exactly. I love it. But that's another example of a Lisa Marshall convert. Listen, you have done so much work. I mean, you've worked with Johns Hopkins University, with Harvard, you've consulted with them. You're a speaker, you're an author, a coach. What's the best thing you like to do? What do you like to do the best, I should say?
It's interesting. If you had asked me that question last year, the question is different this year.
Really? What's the difference?
Yeah, I used to tell the sales guy that worked with me, I'm like, don't book me for coaching. Don't book me for coaching. I don't want to do it. Make the price so high they don't want to come, because I didn't want to do that in my business. But now I'm finding that I actually really enjoy the coaching, and that I find myself that when there's times when I'm sort of in my downtime, that's the stuff that I'm thinking about. So maybe it's just the season. I don't know.
Right. I love it.
I think what I enjoy the most is when I can see a clear change
Mm-hmm.
from one state to another, where I can see, the company goes from a team that's not working successfully to working successfully, or an individual that I work with that goes from having issues to being successful.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get those emails of people saying, oh, this is what happened as a result, this is the change that happened. And I do follow-ups with the organizations, and I can see, we can see actual measured change. That's what I like. That's what
cool.
I get excited about.
That is very cool. I love that. When you're working with entrepreneurs, is there, what's the biggest problem that you encounter? What's the biggest issue that you see most entrepreneurs that have?
I think the first step for entrepreneurs is understanding how to position their business and how to tell stories that position their business. A lot of times somebody will say, well, this is what I do. They don't tell the story of the success. Like I told you the story of my issue. I told you the story of the couple of clients. That's what we need to have entrepreneurs be able to do, is to tell stories effectively. I think that's one area. Another area I think is making presentations to investors, of course, how to make an effective presentation to an investor. That's a very, very specific type of presentation. And so I think that they need to understand, the ins and outs of investor presentations. And then I think just the general interpersonal communication skills, understanding how to find common ground with another human being. And I think I would lay money that if I had to, talk to most realtors, that they're aces in that area. They probably know how to create common ground with the people that they're talking to.
Well, isn't that, I read a book once, which I'm always constantly have in the back of my mind, called Instant Rapport. And it's really trying to tap into people's mannerisms and their speech patterns and all that to sort of figure out a way to communicate better with them. But it sounds like what you're talking about to me is that you're actually trying to get to understand the client better so that you can develop that common ground. What's an easy way to do that?
Yeah. So what you're talking about, the instant rapport, it talks about mimicking the other person.
Yes.
So if they speak slower, you talk slower. If they shake their head, you subtly shake your head. You're mimicking them. That's actually something that, if you look at all the research, there's not a whole lot of research that actually supports that. I should say there's not a whole lot of academic research that supports that.
I've been doing that for 10 years, Lisa.
A lot of people have. A lot of people think that that's something that does work, but there really isn't a whole lot of academic evidence to support that.
Okay, good to know.
What there is evidence to support is this concept of laying a common ground. So, imagine there's two people that don't know each other. They're like two circles, when they come up.
Right.
And as you begin to meet somebody, the idea is that you need to first just tap the edge and then slightly overlap in order to get to common ground. Of course, you don't want to just meet somebody and jump into here. That's when you're, too much TMI, too much information. But the idea is, what can you do in order to establish that common ground? And once you get the overlay, what can you do? So the circle that I talked about, that comes in layers. So on the outside is our environment. As we move in, we have activities, we have roles, we have our interests, we have our values, we have the things that in the very, very center that we hold dear. Maybe we don't even share them with anybody. So it's sort of the heart information. And the idea is that you want to share the outside edge, the roles, the activities. But as you're sharing those, you want to also share things that relate to your values. So for example, you might share a role. Let's say you find out that the person is also a father, right? Or a grandfather, depending on, what stage, of season of life you're in.
Right.
So you're going to share that information with that person, but as you're sharing it, you're trying to listen to, what does that person say? Do they find that family is really important to them? Is family not important to them? What is it that makes this person tick? And then as you reciprocate with them, you're going to reciprocate a story about yourself that's true. Again, this is authentically, that is what your value is relating to the what you're talking about. So maybe your value of family, your value of working really hard, whatever it is that person brings up that you can relate to, you're going to tell a story that relates to that value. And that's the way you get that overlap in common ground.
I see.
And that is what makes people like you. That's what makes people want to do work with you.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
That's really cool, because when I'm giving talks in front of groups, it's always more important to explain by storytelling than just give me the facts. But you know what's
Right.
interesting, and I think in our culture, and obviously you know more about this, but in our culture, it seems to me that in the United States, we tend to be more like wham bam, thank you ma'am kind of thing. Let's get in, talk to the clients, and sell the deal. And a lot of realtors are this way too, as opposed to, I guess what you're suggesting is taking more time with the
Take,
prospect or the potential client and spending more time understanding them.
yeah, and I don't think, personally, I don't think it takes any more time to develop that sort of common ground. What it takes is more effective listening. It takes more time thinking in your own mind that the other person is more important, that you're going to focus in on them. I think what happens is a lot of times we get focused in on ourselves, and that blocks us having we miss what that connection is.
Right.
We miss what it is that we can say to build that strength because we're so focused inward. And I do it myself. I've caught myself doing it, where I've met somebody and I tune out, I start thinking about something else, and I'm not completely 100% focused on them, and I missed an opportunity to connect.
Well, and that's one of the things I always have to, as an interviewer, I have to keep saying to myself, okay, stop thinking about the next question that you're going to ask Lisa. Concentrate on what her lips are saying now. So
right, and actually have a conversation. I've done so many interviews where it's not a conversation. It's one person asks a question, then there's an answer, and the person's barely paying attention, and they ask something again. Sometimes they even repeat something that I've already answered. I'm like, did you listen?
I love it. Well, for those of us that have the attention slightly greater than a gnat, as my mother says. No, but I think that's a really good point. I love the listening because there are so many entrepreneurs that I run into and that I consult with that don't. I mean, they don't have that kind of skill. But
well, I mean, I think it sounds easy. People are like, oh yeah, just listen. But in reality, listening, and I mean really listening and paying attention and thinking about, okay, when they say that, what is it that they're communicating to me? You're not just listening in the sense of I heard them say, my son's at whatever college.
Right.
You're listening for what's behind that. Did you hear something in it that sounded like, oh, he's in college and I'm financially strapped? Or did you hear, oh, he's in college and he's, this is the first kid to graduate and education is really important to us. There's all kinds of nuance behind a simple statement. And when I'm saying listening, that's what I'm talking about.
I love
the
it.
additional bits of information.
That reminds me, Lisa, about I saw a TED Talk, Brene Brown. She's a psychologist from Texas, and she talks about being empathetic and how you can use your empathy to actually get into people's shoes and feel for them and be vulnerable for them as well too, and that's maybe one way that you can sort of connect the circles, as you would say. But I like that a lot. That's really good. But let me get to another topic. Switch gears here on nerves. And you just wrote a blog post, which I thought was so funny. You, the communication expert, being nervous speaking to your children's school, which I thought was so cute. I loved it. But that's a big thing for all of us. I mean, that's a big thing when you get in front of a group of people and you're speaking, whether you're getting in front of a client for the first time as a realtor. What do you do, or what do you recommend people do to sort of get over it, get past that?
Well, there are at least 10 different ways that you can do to overcome nervousness. I'll cover the top 2, and then if people are interested, they can go to the Public Speaker Podcast and just type in nervousness or speaker anxiety, and they'll get the remaining 8 or 10 of them.
Perfect.
But if you look at research says the number one thing, most people think it's practice, but in fact it's not practice. It's getting feedback, and it's getting actual video feedback, no matter what the situation is. And so it's having extended feedback that you can see yourself back from, not just somebody verbally like a coach telling you. That's one aspect of it, but the person actually needs to see and hear themselves interacting. So even for realtors, that's important that you would see yourself in those situations, maybe even videotape a situation. I know it's a little odd, but plus with a person that's I guess you couldn't do it with a real person because they wouldn't, that wouldn't be permissible to do.
But you're recommending actually videotaping yourself, maybe giving a listing presentation.
Absolutely. Making the whole presentation and looking at yourself, because you're going to want to look for things that you do well and things that you don't do well. And having that process of reviewing is the thing that makes people get stronger. The first reaction typically is, ew, I look ugly, or oh, I don't like the sound of my voice. But after you get past that first reaction,
right.
then people start to look. And the majority of people, their next response is, boy, I'm better than I thought. And then after they get through that, then they're like, you know what, I could do that a little better, or I could do that a little better, or maybe I didn't do that. And then the idea is that they can pick up just one thing to work on, or two things to work on, and then develop that. But getting the feedback is the thing, the primary way that people get better.
And therein also would give you more confidence too.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Right. When you get the feedback, when people go through like a course, for example, you know, that's what they say, take a 3-day course. In your case, I'm not sure they could take a course per se, but if you take a course and you take an extended course, that's the idea, that over time you're going to get that feedback and you're going to get better.
Okay.
Now, there are several other techniques. My favorite technique is it's called visualization technique. I'm sure, are you a sports person? Do you play any sports?
A little bit.
Well, a lot of people who play sports will use this technique. You know, for example, Nicholas, what was his first name?
Jack Nicklaus.
Yeah, Jack Nicklaus, the golfer. He was into visualization way before sports psychologists even thought about it. And the idea is with visualization is to think about the scenario, whatever it is that you're doing, in extreme detail. So let's say you're going to be doing, you know, a presentation about a house listing, right? So you go through walking in, sitting down, or standing up, whatever it is that you're going to do, imagining the person that you're going to be talking to, imagining the room, imagining the paperwork that you're going to go through, imagining the details of the step by step by step, every little detail, and even the reactions of the people. And the process of doing this visualization. And by the way, I've written a couple podcasts on that as well. You can go listen to the step by step. Yeah. Going through that process of the visualization improves performance. In fact, there was one very interesting study that they did in 2004 where they had people just flex their little finger, and they had them flex it for, I don't remember, like 7 weeks or 12 weeks, I forget what it was, but they wanted to see if they could increase the strength of the person's finger by doing that. So half the group did the exercise and the other half just mentally did it. They weren't allowed to move their hands. And then of course another group did nothing at all. So the group that did nothing, they didn't improve at all. The group that did the physical practice increased by 53% their strength. The group that did mental only practice increased strength by 37%.
Wow. That's amazing.
Just through mental practice.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing if you think about that. And they do studies with the resonance imaging in the head, and they found that when people do mental practice is the same from the brain's perspective as physical practice. It lights up the same areas of the brain. It creates new neurons in that same area.
Wow.
So doing this mental practice is a significant factor. And some people think, oh, well, then it's only for physical things.
Right.
You know, it's only for strength. It's only for sports. But that's not the case. They did the work with presentation skills for speaker's anxiety. They've done it for tasks like interviewing skills. They've done it for a variety of mental tasks as well, and people improve.
I love it. I love it. Well, there you go, everybody. Video feedback and visualization. I love that. That makes so much sense. Lisa, last question for you, because I know we want to wrap this up, but you have a brand new entrepreneur. You have a 2-year realtor. You have somebody that is relatively new that wants to start their own business, and they're sitting in front of you, in front of your desk, and they're asking, what's the most important thing that they need to keep in mind when they're starting their business? Go for it.
I only get one thing? Oh, no.
I know, we all need much more than one, but you got to pick one.
Well, of course, since I'm a communication person, I'm going to have to stick with that. But I'm going to spread it out in the sense that you need to know what your unique position is. You need to know how you're going to communicate yourself, your brand. What is your brand going to be? How is that going to be shown on your website? How is that brand going to be shown with you in person? How is that brand going to carry through in everything that you do to your social media, all across the board communication? Wow. And then that's sort of my inspirational message, but a more practical, of course, because I'm very practically oriented. I think that I would say, if you're just starting out, to learn as much as you can, and books are a really great way to learn as much as you can, very inexpensively. So I think that reading lots and lots of books is far more effective than spending an hour, say, looking at a webinar or watching a video like this. Or
Thanks,
No,
Lisa.
I know, really. No, reading books gives you a lot of practical how-to knowledge, and I think that's really useful to spend time doing that, and to trust your instincts. I think that a lot of times when you're early on, you don't trust yourself enough. You keep going out to other sources, and at some point you really need to just trust who you are and trust your abilities and trust that the brand that you've decided on is the way to go.
I love it. I love it. That is great, Lisa. And speaking of books, you have a smarttalksuccess.com is your new book that you just came out with. And we'll have that in
Smart Talk is the name of the book, yes. And the website is smarttalksuccess.com.
Great.
And
I was going to say, we'll have that in the show notes, but go ahead.
Great. Yeah. So I have a challenge for everyone who's listening. You can do a 14-day challenge. It's free. You'll get each day, you get a little challenge to your communication skills, and it'll walk you through a way to improve. And I've gotten lots of great feedback. Hundreds of people have gone through this challenge, and a lot of people really love it because it's really simple. It's just one thing a day, and they're making pretty significant changes. These minor changes to their communication makes these big changes to success. So I recommend trying it.
And you get that from the website, Smart Talk Success?
Yes, you can get it at smarttalksuccess.com. They can find it on the main page, or they can go to /challenge and find it there.
Perfect.
So
and we'll make sure we have that information in the show notes, as well as all the great information that you provide to all entrepreneurs at lisabmarshall.com. Lisa, thank you so much. I am honored that you took the time to be on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Chris. I love your style. I love the whole show. So I'm really glad that I was able to be here and to be invited. So thank you.
Well, thank you. You take care.
Bye.
Hey, is Lisa amazing or what? I really enjoyed talking to her. She is so knowledgeable about communications, which is so key for all of us entrepreneurs, for all of us real estate brokers and agents. You know, we have to nail this communication thing down, and I don't think that we really are, quite frankly, doing all that great of a job, myself included. So something to really pay attention to. I loved her advice, especially about the visualization technique and how that can really even help you get over nervousness. I mean, that was sort of a cool thing for me to hear. So really enjoyed talking to Lisa. Make sure you go to her site, lisabmarshall.com. Make sure you go to smarttalksuccess.com and take her 14-day challenge. She is raising your communication IQ. I just love that for some reason. So make sure you give us some love down below. Tell Lisa what you think about this interview and what you think about this show. I want to thank Lisa so much, and I want to thank you guys for listening. Make sure you go to massiveabundanceinc.com. Get your free goodies when you sign in there, and may massive abundance be yours.